Call the meeting to order of the joint Sioux Falls City Council and Minnehaha County Commissioners today, Tuesday, April 24th, 2018. I would recognize that there is a quorum on the Minnehaha County side.
Could we have a roll call on the city side, please?
Council members Erickson.
Here.
Erpenbach.
Here.
Kiley.
Here.
Neitzer.
Here.
Rolfing.
Here.
Selberg.
Here.
Starr.
Here.
Staley.
Here.
Mayor Huther.
We do have a quorum.
I would ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. On Minnehaha County side, I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Move to approve on the city side.
Second, Erickson.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilor Erpenbach, seconded by Councilor Erickson.
Councilmember Erickson.
Here, yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Kiley.
Yes.
Neitzer.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
Staley.
Yes.
That has been approved.
Item number 1 is the Museum Special Enterprise Fund report. Bill Hoskins. Good evening. Good afternoon, Bill.
Good afternoon. Bill Hoskins, Director of the Siouxland Heritage Museums. I'm here today to deliver the annual report for 2017 for the Museum Special Enterprise Fund. The Museum Enterprise Fund, the Museum Enterprise Fund was established by a joint resolution in 1995. The resolution was updated in the year 2000. The resolution requires that I make an annual report to the City Council and County Commission on that, and here I am. The purpose of the Enterprise Fund was to receive revenues and account for expenses associated with the rental of space in the museum system, sponsorships, and the provision of programs, events, and services for which a fee is charged. The fund is part of the museum's overall budget. We actually have 6 different parts or budgets. 2 of them are revenue-based for our tax-based budgets. This one's one of the revenue funds. It is administered by Minnehaha County. The county administers all the museum budgets. Annual budgets are developed by the staff, recommended by the museum board, and determined by the City Council and County Commission in a joint meeting. The fund receives all of the revenue associated with grants that we receive, with donations and sponsorships. In 2017, we had an income totaling $190,000 and expenses of $156,000. If you look at our last 5 years as a track record, 3 out of the 5 revenues have exceeded expenses, but it doesn't happen every year. I will mention that in 2018, we actually have a deficit budget approved, and part of that is we've been building our fund balance, which I guess is one of my next slides down the line, to be able to use some of that resource for fixtures, equipment, and moving into the new building. The revenue that comes in comes from a variety of sources. One of those sources is the museum's endowment fund at the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation. That is an endowment established in the early 90s. It's grown quite a bit in the last couple of years, about 30% in the last 2 years. Currently, it's about $1.3 million. We can draw 5% of the average balance over the last 8 quarters, or up to that amount. And that money comes into our budget through the Museum Enterprise Fund, and that's how it's accounted for and tracked. We also are the recipient of another endowment fund, the Doc and Florence Brown Fund. We're one of a number of recipients. We just received a check from that one. Florence was my 4th grade teacher. The Museum Alliance is another place. The Alliance is a private nonprofit friends group. They adopt certain projects over the course of the year, make cash donations. It comes in through the Enterprise Fund and is administered. Some of the other areas are donation box. We have donation boxes at both the Pettigrew and Old Courthouse Museum, and that also includes just checks or public donations to the museum. Education fees. We have a number of programs that we charge a fee for. Probably about half of our programming is free to the public. About half we charge a fee from, but 13% of the income in 2017 was from educational programming that we do. Exhibit services is another area. We do, in addition to producing exhibitions at the Old Courthouse and Pettigrew Home and Museum, we do certain exhibits work for a fee for other organizations in the region. The Museum Store Fund is our other revenue fund or budget, and that was set up to account for revenues and expenses associated with operating the museum store. And we did a balance transfer. That was part of the budget process, but in January of each year, the commission is authorizing a balance transfer. In 2017, I believe that was $10,000 from the store fund to the enterprise fund, where it was used to support educational programming. And rentals. Rentals are the provision of space for weddings and such at the Old Courthouse Museum. In 2017, we had, let's say, 95 number of rentals, and all the revenue from that comes into the enterprise fund and is accounted for in there. Conversely, we have expenses. Our expenses took place, educational programming were about 15% of our expenses in the fund, exhibits, production, 9%, the collections, supplies and materials, and the conservation of different artifacts was 14%. We have some money that we spend in marketing of events or exhibits in the enterprise fund. Rentals, and we have an expense associated with providing those rental spaces for weddings and so on. That was about 15% of our total expenses. That also accounts for all the part-time and overtime labor associated with providing those is paid for out of the enterprise fund. Finally, we do have payroll, and we have 2 full-time positions, the museum exhibits assistant and the events coordinator, where 1/3 of their salary and benefits is paid for by the enterprise fund. We also have intern positions during the summer that the enterprise fund is also paying for. That's in the payroll. Other is all the staff training dollars are provided for from the enterprise fund. That's money coming from the endowment and spent there. And we also have a number of taxes and fees that we have to pay in association with providing those exhibit and educational services. Here's the fund balance. The fund balance at the end of last year was $223,000. And it has been growing over the last few years, and we've been purposely trying to build it up so that we would have the resources for the Museum Resource Center, the new collection storage building. And we have, in the 18 budget, about $155,000 of the enterprise fund money budgeted for making the move of the collection, buying fixtures and equipment for that building. We do have one section in the fund where we really track things a little more closely, and we call them obligated funds, and there's a separate report. but these are really, makes up about 40% of the total fund balance. This is when we get a grant from like the Daughters of the American Revolution for shelving, or the Alliance or a corporate sponsor gives us money for the concert series. So those are what we call our obligated funds. And in 2017, about 42% of those funds were for collections management or conservation. Educational programming, about 22%. Exhibits, 23%, marketing, 8%, and staff training, 5%. Really, if you sum up the fund, it does a great deal for us, but it paid for a third of 2 full-time positions. It paid for all the labor associated with space rental in the museum system. 100% of the cost of doing our educational programs, supplies and materials, 100% of the artifact conservation costs, 100% of staff training, 71% of our collection supply and materials in all budgets, 51% of exhibit materials in 2017. Really, the Enterprise Fund is a great tool that you provided to us, the city and county provide to the museums to help us fulfill our mission with the public. And that's my quick overview. If you have any questions, happy to try and answer them.
Thank you, Bill. Are there any questions from the joint members? Okay, seeing none. All right, we'll move on to item number 2. Item number 2 is consider a motion to approve the proposed change orders of the Museum Collection Storage Building. Bill Hoskins. Item number A is the RFP number 9 is a deduction change order in the amount of $1,632.67. And item B is an RFP number 6, an add change order in the amount of $965. Thank you, Bill. If you'd address those.
Sure. These are 2 more small change orders. They resulted in a conflict in the plan. One was the creation of a helper plate just to span 6 inches in one area. It was welded. It's all structurally sound. That's the number 6, $965 add. Then the plumber used a different type of pipe insulation, which the architect approved. That's saving us $1,632. So if you approve both of these, we'll have a decrease to the project total of $667. And that means that out of our contingency that we had of about $200,000, we're actually spending $12,379 if you approve these change orders tonight.
Thank you, Bill. Are there any questions from the joint group? Seeing none, I would look for a motion on the county side.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. City side.
Motion on the city side, please.
So moved, Erickson.
Second, Rolfing.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Item number 3 is consider a motion to support the proposed road construction of 54th Street North, east of Westport, to the museum access point and parking lot. Bill Hoskins.
Okay. This is the new museum building is located on the southeast corner of Westport and North Westport Avenue and 54th Street North. We access the parking lot will be off 54th Street, approximately 280, 300 feet from that corner of North 54th Street and Westport. 54th Street at that location is not yet constructed. We had at one point planned a temporary construction road, a temporary road that would access that parking lot. That was taken out before the bids and was not included in the original construction bid for this project. In November, it was asked by the architect and the contractor to include a gravel temporary access. That is a change order for just over $15,000 that you approved in November. Mark Mickelson came to the county commission at the county's building committee earlier in April and had a proposal. Mark indicated that Jansmick, the property owner to the north, and Sanford, who is the adjacent property owner to the south, were planning to construct a road. And Mark is here. I don't want to put words into his mouth, but what I understand is they were asking collectively for a contribution of $25,000 to the road construction. Going back some time, when the land was platted, there was a 50-foot right-of-way for that road that was platted off with the land that was sold. The county and city, as I understand it, have no legal obligation to participate in the construction of that road. The county commission asked that we bring this forward to you for discussion.
Thank you, Bill. Mark, did you want to have any comments on this? Or did you just identify yourself and your address, please?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Mark Mickelson, 2901 South 5th Avenue, Sioux Falls. Dale Jantz and I have been partners on some land in what's now in the vicinity of the Sanford Sports Complex. As I tell Dale, I said I'm 14 years into a 10-year deal. So, but we've been developing what ended up being a couple hundred acres of land. And north of the Sanford Sports Complex, there's a 38-acre piece of land that we own. And I don't know if you've got a map at all, if the computer comes back on, but Jans Corp is building their facility in that quadrant. And then one of the problems as a developer, and this is more of just a project for me, but Dale Jans is a contractor, is you always have to work out arrangements with your neighbors to share the cost of building a road. And typically that would be done 50-50, but if your neighbor's not ready, they can say no, and then you have a problem. You guys have been through that on the city council, I'm sure, many, many times. So we ended up being able to sell a piece of land to back by that cursor there. So right there, that's the tract. That's been graded already. And so we sold a piece of land. It was 3 acres. And part of the agreement we made with them is said, yeah, we'll have to get that road built. And we wouldn't have been able to sell that 3 acres nor make that commitment, but we went to Bob at Sanford, and he said, yeah, we'll split the cost with you. He didn't really have a compelling need to build the road. It was a pretty good thing for him to do. I'm very appreciative of it. And so we made the agreement. The company's going to end up moving their jobs from California. It's a good thing. And so he said, as part of that, don't you think maybe the county museum would pay for a portion? We weren't aware that when you received your gift that the 40-foot trek of the road had been held back and all that. So I called Carol and just said, listen, would you consider making a contribution towards the cost of the road? The road's going to cost, our engineers' estimates is like $350 a lineal foot. It's like probably 1,600 feet. It's close to $500,000. And so your property is on Sanford's side of this. And so if you would consider supporting a what I would view as a relatively modest contribution towards the cost of the road. That will go towards Sanford's portion of the cost because you're sitting on their side of the road. Our piece is the north piece, and that's the south piece. And yes, we've made the commitment to build the road, and we are going to build the road. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mark while he's still standing up here? Okay. Are there any questions on the joint group side? Okay. Councilman Nance.
I find myself rather baffled here of what I've heard here in the last few minutes and what I heard in about an hour ago. So normally, if you have a private development, both sides are going to split the cost, normally. And maybe one developer's ready to go first, so they'll build the road first, and there'll be a private agreement or whatever, and then the other one pays the other one. But in this case, originally, somebody's got to help me here. The county was gifted, what, 25 acres of land, is that correct? And the deal was we would keep 5 acres?
We received a 25-acre donation of land from Bob and Kari Hall. The original agreement was that we were to retain 5 acres of land and that we could sell up to 20 acres, the proceeds of which to go towards the construction of this new building, which it is. When the county got ready to sell it, a previous county commissioner didn't want any responsibility for the road. And as we prepared the plat for that sale, a minor plat, we platted off the 50 feet of right-of-way and included it in the land that was for sale. And when Sanford purchased the land, they purchased that along with the other 20 as part of that 20 acres.
All right, so we're being asked to contribute $25,000 to pay for part of a road of which is not, that we don't own. I mean, I understand it's going to benefit the museum. I get that. But this is a little different than the normal where one side builds 30 feet, the other side builds 30 feet.
That's exactly right.
That's fair? Okay. So what was the original plan as far as a road being built? I mean, you've got to have access in there already. I mean, if this wasn't going to happen or they weren't going to build a road in the next 2 years, what do you do?
As the project was put together, there was going to be a temporary access road that was originally going to be blacktopped and come down 300 feet to the entrance to our parking lot. And that got taken out before the project was bid last year. Mm-hmm. And then we put back in November through a change order a gravel road to that spot as part of the project.
So, if I could continue, so then that raises a question for me because I wasn't privy to all these conversations. So, if you took a road out, what was the plan to get into the property then? I mean, you take a road out before you finalize a project, and then you add a gravel road back in. There must have been. What am I missing?
I'm not sure exactly how it got taken out by the architect. It did. And it happened in the weeks immediately before the project was bid. I know there were conversations going on between the commission office and Mark at the time, and I don't know where the signals got to.
It was a miscommunication or something. It was not an intentional thing to take it out. Okay, all right. It wasn't. You didn't intentionally take a road out with no plan of how to get into the. Okay, I mean that didn't really follow. Was there any? So I mean, this one county commissioner, and I know who we're talking about without saying their name. Besides that, was there any written agreement as to who was going to build this road, or?
No.
Okay.
Nothing I'm aware of.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Are there any additional questions?
I would like to call City Attorney Paul Bankford forward, please.
Paul Bankford on behalf of the city.
Well, could you enlighten us, because you did have the opportunity to talk to us just maybe about an hour, 15 minutes prior to this meeting, or a few of us, I should say.
I did, and the information that I have at this point, and I want you to understand that I don't have all the documents that support it, but was trying to figure out if the city and county had some obligation to pay this $25,000 for the portion of 54th Street North that would access the museum. And as I was looking into that, I noticed that the letter that was up there just not long ago from Mr. Hoskins, the museum director, indicated that the city and county had no legal obligation to pay for the road. And so looked into that a little further, because generally when this is a collector street on 54th Street North, generally when a collector street is built, the property owners on both sides of that collector street would contribute to the middle of the road for the construction of the road, and that's generally how it works when there are developments. So the statement that there was no financial or no obligation, I checked into it further and was informed that the prior county commissioner, when this 20 acres was sold to Sanford, wanted to make sure that the city and county did not have a legal obligation to pay for this road. And so the entire portion of the property that would have been right-of-way was sold to Sanford, so that it would be Sanford's financial obligation to build that road rather than the cities and counties. Now, that's what was relayed to me. I am still looking for the documents, and I've talked to Ms. Gillespie, who's with the county attorney's office too, in terms of, this all came to light this afternoon, and so we're trying to track down the documents that support that was what was done, and that the intent was that Sanford be responsible for the road and the city and county not be responsible for the road. There was originally, as Mr. Hoskins indicated, a plan to put a temporary road in until whoever developed it, Sanford and Jansmick, or whoever the property owners were, until they developed it, there would at least be access. And as Mr. Hoskins indicated, that somehow got taken out of the plans, but in November, money was budgeted back in for the temporary gravel road, which cost $15,600 and some dollars, and that road has been built and the temporary access is there. Again, and I want to stress, I haven't seen the document that indicates that Sanford was to take responsibility for the entirety of the road and it was transferred to that extent, but that's what the information is that was relayed to me. Certainly would like an opportunity to look into that, because if that is the case, then this $25,000 that is being requested would in essence be a gift to a developer if there's no financial obligation. And there are certainly lots of developments that go on in the city that have collector streets. Some concerns about what doors that would open for future developers to come in and ask for contributions for their collector streets as well. And so from a legal perspective, could you give the $25,000 anyway? I mean, there is a broad definition of what is considered a public purpose. And so could the city and county vote to contribute $25,000 even without there being a financial obligation? I think that you could. I'm not trying to argue that you couldn't. I just ask you to consider what doors you might be opening to requests for contributions in the future if the city and county have no legal obligation. My understanding at this point is that there is no legal obligation. That's what's relayed in this April 6th letter, but I have not seen the underlying documentation that supports that.
Do you know if this was a motion, if I can, Councilor, say that, do you know if this was a motion that was made by the commissioner and then voted upon?
I don't. Like I said, those documents are out there, and Ms. Gillespie and I are looking for them, but we just didn't have sufficient time to find those this afternoon. If anything, and if you would like more information on that, we would be happy to bring that information forward at the next meeting, I think is a month from now, or however you'd like to proceed. But we can certainly track down those documents. I don't have them right now.
Yep.
No, there's no doubt. I mean, I wasn't around. I don't know what agreements you made with Sanford. But no one's here suggesting you have any sort of legal obligation at all. I don't think you do. I think when you made the agreement and they held back the 40-foot access strip, I think the thought was, hey, Sanford, you guys pay for the road. So, this would be you call it a goodwill gesture. There's some benefit for you to have a paved road. The pro rata cost of that road for your lineal footage would probably be $90,000, $100,000. So it's not, it's not a pro rata contribution. And I'm sure that you're planning on constructing, or you've already constructed this access on Sanford's land. So you probably have assumed that they've given you the right to trespass on that, which I'm sure they'd give you for free. I mean, we're just trying to be good neighbors. And so if there's some benefit for you having curb and gutter, street lights, and a paved road, and for your facility is a goodwill token, if you'd like to do it as a neighbor, not as the city, not as the county, but as the owner of a building, it'd be great. If you don't think it is, that's fine too, okay? I mean, you guys got lots of more important things to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Commissioner Bender.
My question's been answered,
Okay.
thanks.
Mr. Staley. or
Well,
Councilman Staley.
Attorney Bigford, would you come up, please? I wasn't aware of any information that came out this afternoon. Was that put out in an email, or was it just private discussions?
Oh, Paul Bigford with the city attorney's office. When we were working on this afternoon, and I was trying to get information together, I did attempt to notify council leadership that there was an issue here and what was going on. And so that's the communication that Councilor Kiley is referring to. There was not it was just a communication with council leadership in terms of, this is an issue that's out there. Please be aware of it. We're looking more into it. That's what happened, Councilor.
Because Councilor Neisert, I think you were aware of it as well. Is that accurate? Yeah, okay. So what would happen if we deferred this? And just to give you a little more time to look into it, and, I mean, is this a time-sensitive thing? That
I'm not aware of it being a time-sensitive thing. I don't know of any impact that waiting a month to make a decision would have. Maybe if Mr. Mickelson has any different thoughts, I don't know.
I mean, I guess so that we all get the same information that you are, just so it's not a few council members, but all of us have a right to hear the same thing.
Absolutely. No, I don't know of any time-sensitive issues associated with this.
I think they probably
Commissioner Karski.
Well, I would like to make a motion to,
No, we're not ready yet.
I guess if this land was sold or the right-of-way was transferred, the question comes to my mind, did we get paid more or did we get paid less because we transferred the right-of-way? Because basically we transferred a liability, we didn't transfer an asset. So when we're researching, if there is some record of that, it would be interesting to know that part.
amen.
Go ahead.
Just want to make the comment, too, that I can assure you, Councilor Staley, that you now know the same information that was relayed to me, as well as I can only assume what was relayed to Councilor Neitzer.
Yep, go ahead.
if we defer this, and that's fine, I won't be around, so I want to say something now. It just appears to me that we're in a situation where we're given the opportunity to not pay for a road that we should be paying half of, because that's the way it was set up when the original contract. Sanford was supposed to have the road and pay for the road. I have no problems with that, although we're tenants and we're neighbors out there now. And for us to put a goodwill gesture of $25,000 in for the whole $500,000 project, I mean, seems to be pretty minor in this situation, especially when there's overrun, we have the funds to do it, and that it would make sense for us to pay at least part of the share that we're going to get the benefit from when that road is put in. It just doesn't feel right to me to not pay, to pay zero and get a new road.
I'm going to make a comment as the chairman. We did discuss this in our building meeting. There is a rock access there. If you haven't been out there, go drive on that access. You're going to haul in mud and you're going to haul in dirt, and that's the way we'll be bringing in our archive stuff until this road is done. We have a huge contingency left, and I think that it's a good project to do, and I think it is a goodwill gesture, but I also think I don't really want to be using a gravel rock road. I walked across it with mud boots on. So if you haven't been out there, maybe you should go look at it. With that, if there's no more comments.
I would just like to say that I do agree with Commissioner Karski, that is a very good question that he raised about whether or not we received, or the county received less for the property due to deeding, basically excluding the right-of-way. So I guess I would not object to deferring this a month for further discussion and research.
Commissioner Barth, excuse me, Michelle, sorry. Councilman Erpenbach first.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you. I just, as one of the early proponents of this project, just would, and especially if it's going to be deferred, I'm fine with that happening as well. I also will not be here a month from now, and so I just would encourage your support of this. Commissioner Heiberger is right. This has always been for me about the preservation of our historic archives. If we can add a little token bit to this, I don't think that we're setting some sort of massive precedent for a bunch of other developers. I think this is something that really is in our own best interests. Again, if you haven't taken the tour of the attic of the old courthouse museum, before you vote on this, I'd invite you to do that, and then tell me you want to drive over a big gravel road to do it. So, thank you.
Commissioner Barth.
I have to say I agree with Councilman Rolfing and Erpenbach on this. The fact is we will get a significant benefit if we can open a pristine new building in the very near future. And the history of this property is really, it goes back 12 years, 14 years. I mean, I can remember when at no charge we let the Sanford folk take out 650,000 cubic feet of soil from this property in order to level their football fields. I can remember when we allowed a construction road to go down the hill to build the new ice facility. This property has been used and abused in our community for the benefit of all of us. And the idea that we would have a rutted, muddy track going to our new building is abhorrent to me. And I would like us to, look, we've got the money in our contingency fund. We're not going to build a third floor on the building or anything with that contingency fund. Let's get it done today and not, well, I hate to say it, but I don't know if I want to hear Bill give another description of all of this stuff. Let's get it done.
Councilman Rolfing.
Thank you. That was very good, Commissioner Barth. I would like to address the idea that we're opening it up for other developers to come in and say, you know, they want a freebie for the road construction. If we build a building someplace, either the county or the city, we should pay for that because there's no other place in the city that's not happening. And so, you know, when we develop if we put a new building someplace out a ways on a collector, we're going to pay our half of that road. So I think we're just making. I don't think that holds a lot of water with that reaction. So.
Councilman Neitzer.
Thank you. Okay, so again, somebody reiterate it for me one more time. Before it was accidentally deleted from the plan, what kind of road was going to be put in? What was budgeted in the project?
What was budgeted in the project originally? It would have been a narrow black top, like a driveway, down the bed of 54th Street to the access point to the parking lot.
Okay, so originally we were going to do a blacktop road. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Estimated value of which was about $25,000.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that does make sense. I still struggle some with, if I have incomplete information, I haven't thought about whether there's a precedent and what the history is. I'm still a little squeamish. I don't know that what's a good idea now won't be a good idea in a month, but I get it.
Councilman Staley.
Well, and if I could ask Mark Mickelson, we're talking about driving on dirt roads. What, if we would give this money, what's the guarantee of when the road's going to be done? Because I thought you was hearing from you that it's here and it's there and it's moving ahead, but we're not sure. So is this road going to be done in 6 months or?
We've made an agreement with the folks that bought the 3 acres that we have the road complete by the end of the year.
And they're going to complete it without this, with or without this money?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
We couldn't, I mean, this is not driving this deal. We had to make an agreement with Sanford. They've stepped into your shoes on your half of the road, and they've asked me, they said, why don't you ask, this would seem to be reasonable, if you can avoid the cost of building the temporary access and we build the road, help buy down their half of participating in the cost of this road.
Thank you. And if I wanted to say something during our discussion with Bill, Councilor Erpenbach, as a citizen, I was watching this before I was elected. I know this has been your passion, and I just wanted to say thank you for your efforts to bring this forward. I know a lot of people were involved, but but I appreciate that. So anyway, I am going to want to make a motion to defer.
We're not
this.
ready yet.
Okay.
Councilman Erickson.
Thank you. So my question is more of a statement. I guess it's not really a question. What I'm hearing is that this temporary access road would cost us about $25,000 to blacktop it, correct? So really, essentially, all we need to do is a change order to say we're not going to blacktop it, and we're going to use the $25,000 for the temporary access road to have it go towards a permanent road instead of doing a temporary access road for 6, 7, 8 months, then we're going to rip it out, which does not sound very responsible to me, because then you're going to have the next person come in with the 3 acres that's going to have to do it all. I mean, what a waste of money. What are we doing with this $25,000? We can either blacktop it, rip it out in 9 months, or we can get the road that we need to get to the museum. I mean, or do nothing at all and save 25 grand down the road. I mean, that's another option that I'm hearing by my counterpart over here, which I understand. But if it's in there that we have the 25,000 for that, why not do it?
Commissioner Bender.
And Bill probably should clarify this, because I don't think there is $25,000 in there right now for a paved road.
No, that was the estimate.
That you're going to have to do anyways and use it out of the contingency.
Before we bid, and what happened is in November, they came to us, they said, we need this change order for a gravel access. It's the same course as what was originally going to be blacktopped. That's done, it's in place. It ended up being less. I probably wouldn't spend the money to blacktop it knowing that they're going to tear it out in the next year. Honestly.
Additional comments?
On the other hand, if I may, it would be really great to have the new road in and done.
Are there any additional questions from the council? Night, sir.
One more. When is the projected opening date of this facility?
Our contracted completion date is August 3rd. Currently, it looks like it's ahead of schedule. I have a progress meeting tomorrow. It's probably a month or so ahead of schedule.
One more question. If we made this decision on the $25,000 today, is that going to move up the road construction? We've been told that it needs to be done by the end of year. Does this have any impact on that?
The primary driver is we're getting our cost estimates today, and so my partner and I are gonna meet tomorrow, and we anticipate a fair amount of variability because when these people bid, they're bidding time and money, and so if we have a flexible schedule, we might be able to generate some savings. So I would anticipate that would be the primary driver of our timing. Is everyone's going to be backed up the front half of the summer and looking to fill the back half. So I don't know that accelerating this is going to be a primary driver in moving this up or not, to be honest with you.
Additional comments? Okay, I would look for a motion. Oh, you have one more comment?
Well, so in essence, we're going to be moving into this facility on the road that we have. So
We don't
he
know.
said the end of
I'd
the
say we
year,
don't
and
know
it's
that.
August. So anyway, okay, take it or leave it. I'll make a motion.
Councilman, it's county goes first.
Oh, okay.
So point of order. I'd look for a motion on the county side on this issue. Commissioner Benega.
I would like to make a motion to approve the $25,000 expenditure.
I would second
I
that.
have a motion and a second to approve the $25,000 access or contribution to the road. All those in favor on the county side, say aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
I would like to make the comment that you could argue, frankly, that by not doing the road initially, we reduce the value of the property, which I will remind everybody that 1/3 of it was paid by a donation of a private party.
I would make the same motion on the city side.
And I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve. I have a motion and a second to approve on the city side. Roll call, please.
I move a substitute motion.
We'll vote on the motion first, and then you can make a substitute motion.
That's not what Councilor Neitzer.
No, go ahead. Go ahead with your substitute motion.
Okay, well, I'm going to move, I make a motion that we defer this until our next meeting, which would be in May.
I'll second that. Neitzer.
Okay, now we'll have a vote on the substitute motion.
Council members Erickson,
No.
Erpenbach,
No.
Kylie,
Yes.
Neitzer,
Yes.
Rolfing,
No.
Selberg,
No.
Starr,
No.
Staley.
Yes.
It's 3-5.
Okay, that motion fails. Or substitute motion failed. Now a vote on the main motion.
Council members Erickson,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Neitzer,
No.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Staley.
No.
6-2 passes.
That passes 6-3.
So the motion passes.
6-2. I'm 6-2. I'm sorry.
6-2 on the city side. With that, we'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is a brief presentation by the Helpline Center's Programming and Services. Janet, hello.
Hello,
Identify yourself,
Janet
please.
Kidams, President of the Helpline Center. Thank you for your time today. I think most of you are familiar with the Helpline Center, but just in case you're not, we're a nonprofit agency, been around since 1974. 3 core service areas, our 211 helpline, suicide and crisis support, and our volunteer connections program. Today, we produce annual community trends to kind of give you a window into what we've seen the past year in our contact center. And so I'm just going to hit some highlights of that, which I believe you all have copies in front of you. So this past year in 2017, we took over 27,000 calls or contacts in our call center, and those contacts are mostly phone calls, but you'll notice that we also detailed out that we do text messages and emails and walk-ins, and we also make follow-up phone calls, so that's all kind of designated there in front of you. I do want to call your attention to how we classify those, the different types of contact. When somebody generally calls us, emails us, or texts us, we classify it whether that's an information or a referral, and then just to clarify what the difference between those two are. If somebody were to call us, a simple information call might be, hey, what's the phone number to the downtown library? We would simply provide that to them. A referral call is going to be much more complicated. That's going to be probably somebody who has multiple needs. Perhaps it's going to be somebody who's a single parent who lost their job and needs to find food assistance, needs to find rental assistance. And so we're going to spend some time talking with them and getting them connected to the appropriate resources. So those referral calls just take a longer time on the phone to help those individuals. And then listening support. Our phone calls were literally, that's what we're doing. We're listening and offering support. They're having some sort of struggle in their life or with their family, and they're just telling us about that, and we're offering support. Our crisis phone calls are suicide related mostly, but they do involve domestic violence, child abuse, sexual assault also come in through the Helpline Center. So I want to just point out what the differences we've seen between 2016 and 2017, specifically with what we have been seeing with our phone calls. We've seen an increase in the number of crisis calls that we've received over the past year. And so with that comes more time with my staff on the phone. Typically, our crisis calls are about 14 minutes in length, and then we saw that actually increase average up to 16 minutes a phone call. And then we're also seeing a larger increase in our referral phone calls. That percentage has increased from 2016 to 2017. And those phone calls take about 5 minutes on the phone, generally speaking, sometimes longer than that, but that's typical. So what, in essence, I will just summarize and say, the folks who are contacting the Helpline Center certainly have concerns that are much more deep than previously, and my staff are spending more time with them. And they're reaching out to us more when they're in that crisis state. I always tell people, I see that as a positive sign. I'd rather have people reach out and talk to us and get the help they need as opposed to suffering in silence. So that's a positive thing. I'm also going to draw your attention to how we classify them based on, it's going to be the slide to the next, or this one. That's okay. No problem. We have lots of parts to our handout. The 211, we classify all of our contacts based upon a national taxonomy. So my phone calls in Sioux Falls, South Dakota are classified the same way as Los Angeles, California. And so we can compare our data nationally, which is sometimes very eye-opening. And so I'm just going to point your attention to a couple of things that we've seen with our trends. The highest percentage of our phone calls fall underneath a classification that's called individual, family, and community support. 17% of our phone calls come there, and that's an actual increase from the previous year. And those types of contacts are for one-time kinds of needs. That's for holiday assistance, Thanksgiving baskets, childcare. And so we have a lot of needs in our community that are oftentimes what we classify as one-time. Another category that you'll notice is quite high for us, another 17%, is our mental health and substance abuse and addictions. And this is, when you look at the national, when you compare it to where we're at in Sioux Falls, you're going to see that that's significantly higher than what they see on a national average. Not to say that the residents of the Sioux Empire have more mental health or substance abuse issues, but that we at the Helpline Center have made ourselves available to talk to people about those issues, and people feel comfortable calling us about that and looking for those resources. So we certainly hope that we are a player in helping people who are struggling with mental health and reaching out for that assistance. I'm going to turn your attention to the panel that we have that talks about suicide. Oftentimes it's the suicide that the Helpline Center gets a lot of attention for, because it's obviously very difficult for those individuals who reach out to us who are struggling with thoughts of suicide. You will notice that our calls are up 34% for suicide in the Sioux Empire specifically. So 2017 was a difficult year. A lot of people struggled with thoughts of suicide. And I will say that from both the city and the county perspective, that the Helpline Center is a definite player in responding to those mental health crises. We certainly partner with both law enforcement agencies, the Sheriff's Department, and also the Sioux Falls Police Department and Metro 911 to reach out for assistance with those individuals who are struggling. And my staff are incredibly adept at talking with somebody and de-escalating that crisis, developing a safety plan, and actually avoiding having to contact law enforcement many, many times. So there's only a very small percentage of the time that we actually have to contact law enforcement to respond to those mental health crisis situations. So I just wanted to kind of leave you with that the Helpline Center certainly is very proud of the work we do with that, and we want to continue to do that. The last bit of information, I know my time is short, but I have to absolutely draw your attention to the Sioux Empire Network of Care. This is our newest program, and I am so excited to talk about this. This is very much a collaborative effort. We are in just our second year. This was actually started several years ago during a visioning process for Sioux Falls Tomorrow. I had the privilege of serving on the Social Services Committee that was looking at what the vision of the social service system for Sioux Falls was going to look like in 10 years. Well, as we had the conversation, we realized we didn't really have a social service system. What we had was a lot of wonderful agencies who help people every day in Sioux Falls, but they weren't connected, and they weren't collaborating, and they weren't working together. So the Helpline Center Board of Directors took that to heart, and they said, we need to do something about that. The Helpline Center needs to step forward. So we did. The Helpline Center wrote a grant to the Bush Foundation and received a community innovation grant to start that conversation about building a collaborative, coordinated system. So we did that just in the past 2 years, and we had a pilot project. So 2017 was the first full year of our pilot project. We had 5 agencies, and we added 2 at the end of the year that were part of that pilot system. And it was very successful. What the Helpline Center did is we purchased a cloud-based software system that allows the agencies to talk to each other. What the individuals in need do, as an example, if the young woman I was talking about who lost her job, single mother, 2 children, realizes that she needs food. She contacts the helpline center. She dials 211. We're going to connect her to the food pantry at Feeding South Dakota, but before we do that, we're going to get all of her basic information over the phone and complete what's called a common intake form. She's going to give us verbal permission to share that in the network of care. She's going to go to the food pantry. When she shows up at the food pantry, they're going to type in her name in the software. All of her information shows up. And then she's actually going to sign a consent form allowing her information to be shared. Along with the verbal consent, she gives her written consent. They make a referral for her to go to community outreach because she needs rental assistance. When she shows up at the community outreach, her information is all there. And I forgot to mention the in-between. What happens is there's a referral, an email that shows up at the community outreach. They know she's coming. And they can say, yes, she received assistance from us, or if she didn't qualify, that referral comes back to the helpline center. It's a closed loop. We could then reach out to her and say, okay, that wasn't effective. You weren't eligible. It didn't work. Let's find another opportunity for you to get that rent assistance. So suffice it to say, we're now in a state where we're growing and adding more agencies. That's what 2018 is all about. So we've just signed on Furniture Mission. Bishop Dudley will be coming on in July, and we just are talking with several other agencies to make them part of this network of care. So our vision is the more agencies we have on board, the more communication, the more collaboration, the more efficient it is for the client, it is for the nonprofit, and we have a repository of comprehensive community data. We truly know how many people are in need in our community and what the unmet needs are, where are they falling through the cracks. So I would just ask for your interest and support of the Sioux Empire Network of Care as we're going out there and talking about that. I know many of you serve on nonprofit boards, and so please encourage them to participate or ask questions of the Helpline Center because we'd love to have them on board with us. So thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Are there any questions or comments from the council, the Joint Council? Councilor Staley. Just all those words don't come out.
I have 3 things I was going to add. Sure. So, first of all, if you can say, and I know you have within the confidentiality aspect, but could you give us a sense of what the driver would be that would kind of drive people to a thought of suicide? Is there a theme that's happening that's made that rate go up?
Sure. Actually, I get asked that quite oftenly, and suicide is extraordinarily complex. So there isn't one single driver in all the cases that we see. And I should let you know that sadly, on the side where there is a suicide death, we respond in partnership with law enforcement. So we go to the home when there has been a death, and so we meet with that family. And so I would say that there is no connecting factor other than the sense of pervasive hopelessness. Whatever is happening in their life, they just can't see that it will ever change or ever get better. And we see all age groups in those suicide deaths and our suicide phone calls. Could be a young person, could be a teenager, and it could be somebody who's 50 years of age. And they all have different stressors in their life.
Okay, I've got 2 more, but I can...
Go ahead.
The Scoop It program, I know that was, and I did meet with the warden to talk about that because I wasn't even aware that that was being kind of propped up by the inmate population. And someone had mentioned that had been restored. Can you tell us what's going on with that? Are we?
No, that actually has not been restored. The Helpline Center had always been a partner with the prison and the inmates to go out and shovel for low-income and disabled individuals. In October, I received a phone call from the warden that said they were discontinuing their support of that program. So the Helpline Center was not able to find a way to get that many volunteers to help that many homeowners. And so there is a program that covers just a small portion of them, Workers on Wheels, through Active Generations, that we worked with to try to recruit more volunteers. but that's a huge need in our community. That need has not been met. Yes, so there's a lot of elderly individuals out there who still, during snow season, still need their driveway shoveled.
Oh, good, an ongoing challenge for us.
That's
And
right.
and then the third thing, you mentioned what someone calls they're in need of food.
Yeah.
You're connecting them to the food pantry. How are we getting them there? They have no car. What are we doing to help them get to the food pantry?
Well, oftentimes we will have to try to problem solve with them. If that's a barrier that they face is transportation. Sometimes they're able to get a ride with a family member or a friend. Sometimes there are, through the faith-based communities, sometimes they will carpool and they'll leave from a church and drive up to the food pantry for several individuals at once to get their food and come back to the faith-based organization. So we've been able to work with individuals to do that too.
So you help them find that they don't have to be a member of that church or that faith. That you're giving them information that they can utilize.
We try to do as much as we can to help problem solve that. Yeah. Sometimes I won't say that we're successful every single time, but we do try to help as much as we can.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Starr has a comment. Oh, you. Okay, sorry, I thought it was Starr.
I'm hiding over here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Salberg, it's me.
Stalberg, I'm sorry, guys.
People are having trouble with that lately.
I'm
Don't worry
looking
about
down
it.
there right at him. He's not answering. I'm like,
It's good to know it's not just me.
Not just you. Well, thank you. Great presentation. That new cloud program tying everyone together, that's amazing. One quick question. Am I reading this correctly? Like the suicide numbers, is it 806 calls last year, suicide calls? And then am I reading it right? Or we had 36 is completed suicides mean
That
what I
is-
think it means?
Yes, that was 36 individuals died from suicide in Minnehaha County. And then that is correct. We received 806 very specific phone calls related to suicide.
Okay. Yeah, I just was making sure I read that right. I don't know how to read that. I mean, obviously, any number's too many, but it seems like they're doing a pretty good job on that. But I was just wanting to make sure I had that right. Thanks again for the presentation.
You're welcome.
answered. Do you have a comment?
I do. I concur that the way you described the network of care, which I was familiar with already, but having you kind of circle back and explain it is really fabulous. So how is this program funded and how is it ongoing? Because somebody's got to pay for the cloud, somebody has to write the software. I mean, how is that going to sustain?
Yes, that is an excellent question. We actually just received a second Bush Foundation grant because they were so impressed with the work we had done with the first 2 years. But there was a caveat that came with that. The Bush Foundation grant said, hey, we're going to help you fund this for the next 3 years with just smaller portions for each of those 3 years. And it's up to you to find that sustainable funding from your community to keep it going. So currently what we're doing, it's about $160,000 an annual cost, which pays for the software, pays for the staff time that goes into it. We fund that through the Bush Foundation. The Sioux Empire United Way is a partner. And then the agencies that are part of the network actually contribute. Based upon the number of end users they have, they pay a fee of $370 per end user. And then we have several of our financial institutions, banks, that have gotten on board to say, hey, we think this is a great idea. So they're helping us support it too. So over the next couple of years, what you'll see me out in the community doing more is probably some fundraising to kind of replace some of those Bush Foundation dollars to make sure we can keep this going. Yeah. Thank you.
Great.
Additional comments?
Janet, there's a upcoming awards
Yes.
coming up, a banquet coming up that the helpline is closely associated with. Why don't you give a plug for that as well?
Sure, absolutely. Spirit of Volunteerism Award Banquet, May 10th at the Sioux Falls Convention Center. Every year we honor, I think 77 nominees is how many people have been nominated this year. That really just the heart and soul of people who give back to all of our nonprofits. And so if you are available to come for just an amazing luncheon that just makes you feel awesome inside, please join us that day.
Thank you, Janet. With that, I'd make an announcement that Sioux Falls City Council will have an informational meeting that will start in 10 minutes. And I would look for a motion on the county side to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Motion on the city side? Move. Got a motion? And a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
We are adjourned.